Hi everyone, Miss Desario. We are about to start lesson 1.7 video notes for the Southern Colonies. And much like we did for New England and for the Middle Colonies, our objective today is students will be able to identify economic, political, and social characteristics of the Southern Colonies. Example. The Southern Colonies were settled for economic reasons. The Southern Colonies on the map here to the left are going to include Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So the New England colonies were established for religious freedom. The Middle Colonies were established for religious and economic reasons, and the Southern Colonies were established for primarily economic reasons. First, the Southern Colonies' political characteristics were characterized by a representative democracy. And again, a representative democracy is when you elect someone to represent you. And this is what we have in our current day government. The first example of this is going to be the House of Burgesses. And the House of Burgesses is actually represented in this picture right here to your left. This is the Grand Hall of the House of Burgesses. And this was the first elected European government in North America. Now, I say first elected European government in North America because there could have been elected Native American governments that we are unaware of. So I like to say that this was the first elected European government in North America. In addition to that, though, the governments in North America, especially in the Southern Colonies, still had strong connections to England. The economic characteristics of the Southern Colonies are actually going to be divided into two groups. The first group is going to be what we call the coastal region, which is everything east of the Appalachian Mountains. And that's what we see depicted in the picture here to our left. This is a picture of slaves harvesting tobacco. And the economic characteristics of the coastal region were defined by what we know as cash crops. Cash crops are crops where we made a lot of money, and those were primarily tobacco. Tobacco, tobacco, rice, and indigo. Indigo is a plant that they used to make blue dye. It was very profitable. Individuals that set up these cash crops were known as cavaliers. Cavaliers were individuals that received land grants from English royalty. So again, their idea was to come over here and make money. Now, the second region that we're going to talk about was vastly different than the coastal region. This is going to be everything west of the Appalachian. So we call this the Inland Appalachian region. And this was mostly small farms and hunting. So two very different areas. The social characteristics of the Southern Colonies. When the Southern Colonies were first established, there was an attempt to use indentured servants. So people that would come and work and pay off any debts that they made. This, however, was not sustainable and not successful. And this is where we saw the transition into slavery. The first slaves were brought to Jamestown in 1619. Against their will. Here we see a photograph. This is actually a slave pen in Alexandria, Virginia, actually right on Duke Street. The slave pen itself is no longer there, but the original house where this was a part of is still there. And we believe that this was after the Civil War, sometime between 1861 and 1865. It looks like there is a Civil War soldier right there. But it just gives you an idea how expansive the slave trade in this area was. In addition to slavery being part of the social characteristics of the South, there was also the religious characteristics of the South. The South was still very closely tied to the Church of England. Again, the Southern characteristics in general was just a strong tie to England. In addition to that, your social status in the South was based on land ownership and family. So again, who was your family? How were they tied to England? Just to reiterate that strong tie to England. So again, just to summarize the characteristics of the Southern Colonies, the political characteristics was going to be a representative government. It was too spread out for people to participate in direct government, so they would elect someone to represent them. The political characteristics was based primarily on the economic characteristics was based primarily on the coastal region and the cash crops, which then led us directly into slavery and the increased demand for slaves. We saw the first slaves brought to Jamestown in 1619. There was a lot of strong ties still to England and to the Church of England, and a lot of people's social status was based upon that.